Hello there, my name is Gavin Walsh and today is Saturday the 27th of June 2026 and welcome to the St. Kevin Truth Files Part 11. This one is a bit of an unusual one in that it's the first ever video from a third party, so I'll just explain a little bit of it to you before I roll it for you. Some months back I was in communication with a former United States Air Force pilot, a former United States Air Force instructor and a former United States Air Force test pilot. And this man has a lengthy career of over half a century of flying, and indeed in the latter part of his career he was a commercial pilot flying the world's largest twin, I believe it was the 777, the world's largest twin jet. He was flying on the long-haul routes. He was with United Airlines. He has done a video on my story of the St. Kevin, and overall I'm very happy with it. He's been very impartial. He's been very upfront. He hasn't taken either sides. He's presented, I suppose, the likely scenarios. But it's symbolically, this is huge for me because it's the first contact I've had outside of me doing my own video. So hopefully it'll be the start of a bit of traction. Now, the last time I looked at it, he put this up, I believe, 2 days ago on Thursday. And I think he's had 3,000 or 4,000 hits on it. Now, whether it's 3,000 or 4,000 hits or 3,000 or 4,000 views or 3 or 4 million, the numbers don't concern me. There's only one number that concerns me, and that's one, the right one person to see it and hopefully go and educate themselves and do a bit of research and see, am I full of SH1T or am I telling the truth about these people that have been left in a plane in the bog along with their captain who was wrongfully blamed. Anyway, he presented the video, I think, quite well. I did submit him some photographs, but I had virtually no say in the production of it. I wanted it to be as completely impartial and as unbiased towards both me and the airline of 1952, and indeed the powers that be. And I think on that basis, he's done a pretty good job. And this pilot in question, he's a YouTuber. His name is, he's Captain Ron Rogers, and I believe his YouTube channel is called Aviation Adventures. So if you want to go straight to the channel, you just go to YouTube and put in Aviation Adventures, Shamrock 165, which of course is the title of my trilogy, and all will come up there. So hope you enjoy it, guys. Okay, onwards and upwards. Justice for Jimmy Looms. Cheers all to my followers. Thank you.
On a cold winter night in January 1952, an Aer Lingus airliner flying from London to Dublin never made it across the Irish Sea. Instead, it slammed into the mountains of Snowdonia in northern Wales. 23 people lost their lives, and the official investigation, easy, blamed the captain, saying he flew the airplane off course. But more than 70 years later, a researcher claims the captain may have been completely innocent. So what really happened to Aer Lingus Flight 165, the St. Kevin? And did investigators get it wrong? The airplane involved was the Douglas DC-3, one of the most legendary airliners ever built. And by the early 1950s, the DC-3 had already proven itself as one of the safest and most reliable aircraft in aviation. Aer Lingus operated several of them on routes between Ireland and the United Kingdom. The aircraft involved in this accident was named St. Kevin. It was operated as Aer Lingus Flight 165, scheduled to fly from London to Dublin. On board were 3 crew members, 20 passengers, and the captain was James Richard Jimmy Keohane. Now, that's not even the Gaelish, near the Gaelish pronunciation, so I'm not going to go there. We'll leave it as Keohane at that. Now, he was an experienced Aer Lingus pilot, and this should have been a routine flight, but something went terribly wrong. It was the evening of Thursday, January 10th, 1952. The DC-3 departed London and headed west towards Ireland. To reach Dublin, the aircraft had to cross Wales and the Irish Sea. Weather in that region during winter can be challenging. Clouds, poor visibility, and strong winds are not uncommon. And before the airplane ever reached the coast, disaster struck. As the aircraft crossed North Wales, it flew into the mountain region of Snowdonia National Park. At some point during the flight, the DC-3 descended into terrain. The airplane slammed into a mountainside. The impact destroyed the aircraft, and tragically, everyone on board was killed. For Aer Lingus and for Ireland, it was a devastating loss, and the investigators immediately began to try to determine why the aircraft was there in the first place, because that mountain was not on the normal route to Dublin. The investigation concluded that Captain Keohane had flown off course. According to the inquiry, The airplane had deviated from its intended route and entered mountainous terrain in poor visibility. Today we call accidents like this controlled flight into terrain, or CFIT. That's when a perfectly functioning airplane is flown into the ground because the crew is unaware of their proximity to terrain. Remember, this was 1952. I was 2 years old. There were no GPS systems, limited radio navigation, no terrain warning systems, and no flight recorders. Navigation depended heavily on dead reckoning, radio beacons, and pilot judgment. So investigators concluded that the aircraft had simply wandered off course. Case closed. Or was it? Decades later, a researcher named Gavin Walsh became fascinated by the accident. He spent 14 years investigating the crash of Flight 165, and according to Walsh, the official explanation doesn't make sense. He argues the evidence suggested Captain Keohane wasn't off course at all. Instead, Walsh believes the captain may have been unfairly blamed for the accident. After years of research, Walsh published a trilogy of books about the crash and his findings. Now, I'll show you these guys. I mean, this is the group of books. I mean, you can get a good workout just listing these suckers. I mean, he didn't go with cheap paper, let me tell you that. So he published those, and he argues that the investigation overlooked key evidence. And if he's right, the true cause of this accident may still be unknown. When you look at accidents from the cockpit perspective, there's something important to remember. In the early days of aviation investigation, when evidence was limited, blaming the pilot was often the easiest explanation. That's the fallback. Blame the pilot, especially if they're dead. But aviation has learned a lot since then. Modern accident investigation looks at weather, navigation aids, air traffic procedures, mechanical issues, and systemic factors, not just the person flying the airplane. And when you look back at accidents from the 1940s and the 50s, sometimes the conclusion deserves another look. So why this accident still matters? Well, Aer Lingus Flight 165 is more than just a historical accident. It's a reminder of how aviation investigation has evolved. Today we have cockpit voice recorders, flight data recorders, GPS navigation, terrain awareness systems. All of these are tools that dramatically reduce the chance of an accident like this. But in 1952, investigators were working with very limited information, and sometimes that meant conclusions were based on the best guess available at the time. 23 people lost their lives in the crash of Aer Lingus Flight 165. The official report blamed the captain, but decades later, researchers are still asking whether that conclusion was fair. Was the aircraft truly off course, or did something else happen that investigators never discovered? We may never know for certain, but stories like this remind us that aviation history is full of mysteries, and sometimes the final chapter has yet to be written. And if there's one thing that 50 years plus of flying has taught me, is that accidents deserve honest investigation, because behind every report, there are real people whose stories deserve to be told. Hey, thanks for watching Aviation Adventures with Captain Ron.